And we're back, even though it's Saturday. We're here for our Wisdom Wednesday webinar series. I'm going to go on Facebook right now and update our Facebook profile just to let the good people know that we're here and we're doing it live on Saturday night for Wisdom Wednesdays. It's kind of like Inception, but if I was as good looking as Leo, who knows what I'd be doing. Let me make a quick Facebook post. Hey, everyone. We're here for another episode of Wisdom Wednesdays. Here's the link. Let me paste it, and there we are. So hopefully we have some more folks join us. But since it is 9:30, my time, 9:31 now actually, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our newest installment of the Wisdom Wednesday webinar series, where myself, Michael Skillern from the Education and Outreach team here at CommonTime like to sit down with you and just talk about different topics in the arts or in education. We've covered topics like differentiation, service learning in the arts classroom, the benefits of guest artists, implementing guest artist education in CommonTime with the IB, MYP, and PYP, implementing guest artists into the IGCSE curriculum. All types of topics like that can all be found in this format on our YouTube at CommonTime Online, and also on the CommonTime.online, which is our website, on the blog header in our blog there. And I just love doing these. I love doing them. What we're going to talk about today is how to curate a magical 1 hour virtual music session. As many countries, cities, provinces, states, what have you, are heading back online, I wanted to offer you my some of the concepts that I believe in as pertaining to virtual learning. Now, I'm going to be speaking through the lens of music because I'm a music teacher, but I think that a lot of the things I'm saying can actually be generalized to other subjects as well, other subjects within the arts like drama, theater, dance, visual art. Or even subjects outside of the arts, like math or trigonometry or like science and things like that. So the reason we do this Wisdom Wednesday webinar series is because at CommonTime, we are in the business of engaging learners. These webinars help us help you engage learners through different ways. We are in the business of empowering artists, giving them a platform to share their content and add value to it, and more importantly, a value that is determined by them. And also, we're in the business of helping arts organizations expand their arts outreach. So if you're interested in any of those things, and if the sound of my voice and my infectious smile are good enough for you, then please head over to CommonTime.online and sign up as an individual, an educator, an artist, or an arts organization today so that you can participate in the community that we're building through our purpose-built, engaging, and insightful booking and video conferencing platform that's working to connect learners, educators, arts organizations, and artists from this corner of the globe to that one, all in your one all-inclusive home for the arts and for arts learning. So Wisdom Wednesday this week, how to create that magical 1 hour virtual session. This works if you're teaching every day. This works if you are teaching in a guest artist capacity like I frequently do. But the way that I'm going to deliver this is I'm going to take you through I'm going to take you through 4 different teaching scenarios that I have found myself in. And I'm going to take you through 4 different virtual 1-hour lessons that I have given. And I'm going to kind of do some reflection as we go along and highlight some of the reasons why I think that these activities and the pacing and whatnot were successful, in hopes that this will offer some enlightenment to you out there in TV land that's wondering, how do I create the perfect 1-hour session that's delivered virtually? So, with that, let's get started. First things first, let me share my screen to here. So, this is the first session I'm going to talk about. This session was actually a hand drumming / improvisation session that I did with some students in India that worked really well. I have since done this in person with my own classes. I've done this virtually with students in Germany. And I'm going to take you through kind of how I curated this and why I think some of these things were successful. Let me pull up my notes here. Okay, so first thing I did here when we were doing hand drumming was start with a hand warm-up where we moved our fingers one by one. We moved our fingers one by one. We moved our hands. We opened and closed our fingers. We rotated our wrists. We clapped our hands to practice just getting the body moving, getting the arms moving. And then I even challenged the students to do a one-hand clap. So when you're doing virtual learning like this, I think one of the most important things you can do is start your classes with motion. It's very possible that your students could be on their 5th consecutive hour of sitting in this chair, just like I'm doing now, and that gets monotonous. So when I started this hand drumming class, the first thing we did was get started with movement and motion. So we got their fingers moving. Move those fingers. Can you move them like this? Can you move just your thumb? Can you move just your ring finger? Can you move your index finger on the one hand and your ring finger on the other? Can we move our hands together when we like this? What do our claps sound like? Can you clap with just your fingers? Can you clap with one hand fingers into the palm of the other? Can you clap with both palms? Now, here's my first point of differentiation. Adding a challenge to your lesson really helps differentiate based on readiness, which is something I take from Tanya Latanzio. I ask students, can you do a one-handed clap? And we have fun going around, unmuting each person to see who can actually do a one-hand clap. But when we get to the end of this, our hands are warmed up. Hopefully our students have some blood pumping and we are ready to get started. So first thing I did, I started off with a little bit of vocabulary. I asked them to repeat these words with me. Say things like the son clave, the samba, the Argentine tango or Argentine tango, and the abandon. I made sure that the students knew what improvisation meant. And I let them know that we were going to improvise with different musical elements like tempo, dynamics, articulation. Then we're going to play the game piece, Cobra by John Zorn. So I kind of introduced some content there after they got their bodies moving, but I don't spend a lot of time on this. Don't spend a lot of time on this content like this because we want it to be engaging, we want it to be motion-based, and we want to keep it fast-paced. I did this lesson extremely fast-paced. So next, we talked about improvisation. We talked about tempo. I asked students to take their drums, their tables, their legs, their chest, their heads, whatever they had to drum in, and I asked them to demonstrate speed for us. Could you demonstrate a slow speed? Could you demonstrate a fast speed? So this lesson did really well in upper primary, possibly middle school, or like that lower secondary age group as well. And I went around the room and I unmuted different students. One thing that you can do to enhance your virtual learning is give students the opportunity to share what they want to say and what they want to play. When we're in class, the students have the pleasure of just blurting out. whatever they want to do, or just playing whatever they want. And to you, that seems like a nuisance. But when you're in this context of virtual learning, you realize a lot of times those other classmates and your teachers are the only people who listens to that kid. So giving them that opportunity to kind of blurt out and say something and participate on their own terms is so helpful. Then I have the students demonstrate dynamics for me. Can you demonstrate soft, loud? Can you go from loud to soft, soft to loud? And then we talked about articulation, where I actually had the students copy my movements, and I would say, take your hand like this, make it into a little tiny crescent moon, and we're going to play right in the middle of our playing surface. Play it with me, and when you're playing with a consistent beat like this, even though the student response will be delayed because of the latency to the student, they're playing with you. And I would keep this steady beat moving. Okay, can we move it to a tone now? Can we play a tone articulation of the drum? Can you bend your hand even more and play from here up on that drum, aiming at the rim of your playing surface with this? If you're on a table, you're hitting it like this. If you're on your leg, you're coming at it like that versus our bass note. Yeah, and I kept that moving. And then I went from there and I told the students, now we're going to do the slap. We're going to pivot our wrist and we're going to go from our fingers, aiming from here up, using that part to strike our playing surface. Some of the students had drums at home. Some of them had tables. Some of them just had their own bodies. But through this, we were able to let some students play by themselves. We were able to keep them moving and keep them following after me. Then I taught them their very first rhythm. Okay, and I did this two different ways. We did it by clapping, by rote. So I would say, repeat after me. And the students would clap along with me. And then we're going to move to the drum. Then I would choose 3 students and I would unmute them and have them play along with me as well. Now, what the student is perceiving is that we're playing together. The student is perceiving that we're playing together. So when I'm playing and then that student is mimicking me, it's not always going to be perfectly together, but as long as I keep a steady tempo, it's going to be close because all the students are hearing me at the same time and they're all muted and that student is playing with me. So we're differentiating our learning here by giving the students different opportunities to learn this. So now we did clapping, we did playing. Number 3 was audio. So I'll show you how I did audio in this example. There is a great online drum machine called Drumbit that looks like this. And I was using Soundtrap because I actually made some backing tracks of me playing the drum. And then I would loop a track just like this. And what this does is it gives your students another chance to experience playing together. So now all of the students in your chat, when you're sharing this audio, they're hearing this at the same time. And then we're all playing. Yeah, we're all playing. And then I go around the room and I unmute people. Whoa, now it's you. Now there's a surprise element inside this. So the students have to participate because they never know when they're going to get called out and end up having to play. So using pre-recorded audio like that and then sharing my screen was a very helpful thing. Okay, then next, we improvised it. So I would pull up. We did improvise, and that's step 4 here. So then I would pull up my drum machine or my backing track, whatever pre-recorded audio you're using, okay? And I would say now we're going to improvise on this rhythm by changing it in some different ways. Type in the chat for me right now if you know how we can change this. And someone would say, volume, we can change the dynamics. And I would go on here and I would play it softer. So I have students join in with my rhythm and then play it softer, play it softer. Then I would have them grow louder, Grow louder. Then I'll say, students, how else can we change this? And if they will get this, I will say tempo. So then I'll change the tempo right off the bat for them. Let me stop it. I changed the tempo now from 80 to 120. So now I'm saying, can you keep up? Can you follow along with this? And the whole time I'm shadow drumming with them too. Sometimes I will actually play and they're still perceiving the sound together. So they're getting my sound and this sound is coming out at the same time. And then finally, we would get into the articulation where I would have students. I'd say, remind me, how do we play bass notes? Join in with me. Keeping them moving, keeping them engaged, moving quickly. So I would say, think about the clave rhythm. Then think about, what will you play for the first note? Maybe I'll play a bass note. Maybe I'll play a bass note for the first 3 notes, and then I'll play a slap for the last 2 notes. Doom, boom, boom, pop, pop. Boom, 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 pop, pop. And then I would do that. I would demonstrate that for the students, how you can change it with our articulation. And then I would take volunteers. Who can show me a clave rhythm where they change the articulation, And then I will choose someone. Can you show me your clave rhythm? And I want you to use at least 2 different articulations. And they would show me there too. Everyone won't be watching. I'd call on 2 or 3 more students. Like I said, giving students the opportunity to play by themselves and to share their art is so key in virtual learning. That same thing, we quickly move to the samba. So the students always feel like there's learning is not static. I heard an Alexander technique person tell me once that balance is not static. When we're young and you try to balance on a balance beam or you're standing on something, you try to get to this spot and you try not to move. When in reality, if you look at gymnasts, they're constantly moving on the balance beam. They're constantly staying balanced. Balance is not a static behavior. It's a moving behavior. And so is education, especially in virtual learning when we're keeping the fast pace. After we've learned this rhythm 4 different ways, keep them on their toes, switch it up. In each one of these, I'm adding global context. I'm talking about Cuba here. I'm talking about Brazil when we're talking about samba. This is great because you're going to have those students who are lost in their computer. You're going to have those students who are not fully participating. And I actually got a report from a student, not a report, but I learned from a student once where I asked him, I was like, hey, it looks like you're not really drumming with us. And come to find out, that student ended up sharing their screen to where they had been Googling about Brazil and about samba music. Was that student doing exactly what I wanted them to do at that time? No, but part of differentiation is giving your students multiple ways to explain their knowledge. The clave rhythm, these students will not know that in 40 years. What's important is that the people of Brazil celebrate, as every culture does. One of the ways they celebrate is through music. And that student knows this. So here we go. Then we do the samba. From that, we do the Argentine tango, talking about Argentina. And then last, we did the abandon. Once again, differentiation is key in virtual learning. We learn this by rote clapping, by rote playing. We learn this by ear with a pre-made audio track, and then we improvise with it by learning our musical elements as well. And I also, for each one of these rhythms, offered the written music as well that will help students connect any way they can. So then the next thing I did is I did a 1-minute self-practice, giving the students time, because obviously students and we know that the virtual learning process can be awkward. I've had a lot of success giving students time to be by themselves, giving them time to participate on their own terms. So as you saw on that slide, I told them, you've got a 1-minute review session. Go over it. I probably gave them 5 minutes where they just sat there and they played the drum. Maybe they played the rhythms I taught them. Maybe they didn't, but I was seeing from their video, I was hearing from unmuting some of them. I was seeing from their responses to me direct chatting them. I also use direct chat often. I try to avoid posting in the whole group because it gets missed a lot. And I just gave them 5 minutes to just play, just to play their instrument, play their drum. Then after that, we talked about the game that we were going to play. These type of interactive activities are also key to having a successful virtual session, making the students feel like they're a part of something, even in this landscape. So if you know Cobra by John Zorn, it's a game piece where the game master shows these different cards, and each card means something. Like this card means everyone play. This card means if I type your name in the chat, or if I call your name, then you should play. If I don't call your name, stop. This one means if you're playing, stop. If you're not playing, start. This one means I will call 2 people. Those people should play. This one means if you're playing, change your volume. And this one means everybody stop. So this game is based on improvisation, and you can play this game. You have to improvise, but the fuel for your improvisation is coming from the rhythms we learned, in the way that you can take those rhythms and then you can use the different music. You can use the different musical elements to actually turn those rhythms into improvisation by changing them. So now we're doing a little bit of improv composition, and then we simply played the game. I think in the first time I did this, we played this game through twice. This game is also good because it's time flexible. This is an activity that can take 5 minutes, or it can take 10 minutes, or it can take 15 minutes, and it's fun. We can stop, we can restart, and we can do it again. Okay, so those are some takeaways about crafting a great session based on that hand drumming and improv workshop that I did. So the next one I'm going to talk about is called Everything's an Instrument, where the students did pencil drumming. So this is another one that did great in upper primary. This one actually does great at all levels because you can easily scaffold the difficulty of what you're playing. Everything's an instrument. So first things first, I wanted to get the people up. I wanted to get them moving. I wanted to get them doing something with their bodies. So what did I have them do? I told them, get up right now, go in your home, find your favorite pencil or pen. Find your favorite pencil or pen. They took 2 or 3 minutes. Students would get up, they'd go here, they'd go there. They're looking for that favorite pen. Okay, then I would tell them, we go to the next slide. What we're going to do today, we're going to turn our pencil or a pen into a drum set. You need that pencil or pen you got, then you needed a hard surface. We're going to learn 3 grooves. A groove is a repeating pattern, is a groove. Once again, we don't spend a lot of time hammering in this content. We're not spending a lot of time hammering in this content because we want the bulk of this session to be engaging. We want it to be interactive. We want it to be active. So first things first, can we make a groove? Here are the sounds that we're going to need. We need a bass drum sound. We're going to use the bottom of our hand. And I would ask people, like, what do bass drum sounds sound like? And people would make sounds with their mouths. And I would say, we're going to make that sound. We're going to hold our pencil like this and use the bottom of our hand. To make bass drum sounds. And I would observe all the students doing this. And like I told you in the last one, just giving them a chance to just play. Just play. Make some noise. Be loud. If your parents don't like it, tell them Mr. Michael told you because you're in music class. Then I would choose students one by one. Jim, let's hear your bass drum sounds. And they would show me, boom, boom, boom. I'd give them some feedback. Are you hurting yourself? Is it safe for you to be I'd do some things like that. Then I'd have them popcorn and call on the next student, keep them on their toes. Okay, let's hear your bass drum sound. Got it. We would do bass drum sounds. And then we would repeat that same process, and then we'd make hi-hat sounds using the tip of our pencil. Then we'd make snare drum sounds using the shaft of our pencil. Then I went from there and did a little improv activity where I would say something like, repeat after me, bass, hi-hat, bass, snare, bass, hi-hat, bass, snare, bass, bass, hi-hat, bass, bass, hi-hat, hi-hat, snare, hi-hat, snare, hi-hat, snare, hi-hat, snare, bass, hi-hat, snare, hi-hat, bass, hi-hat, snare, hi-hat. We did a call and response exercise like this. Once again, keeping the students rhythmic. As long as I'm speaking and playing at a consistent tempo, they will perceive it as if they're playing with me. And then I'll unmute certain students and hear their call and response. Call and response is a really useful tool when doing virtual learning because it tells the students when to play. It tells them when to play. And as long as you're performing at a consistent tempo, they will perceive that tempo as being consistent. And then I would call on students. I would say, Richard, can you make up a pattern? They would say snare, snare, hi-hat, bass, and everyone would snare, hi-hat, bass. We started involving them in the call portion of this activity. So moving forward, we then talked about some grooves we're going to learn. I'm differentiating for interest here, trying to find music that they're all interested in. So I go, who knows this Doja Cat song? And all the students go, I know that song. Once again, at this next point, I wanted to give the students an opportunity to work by themselves. So at this point, I introduced drum bit. Okay, I introduced drum bit, and I'll show it to you here. Hopefully you remember from when I just showed it to you minutes ago. I introduced drum bit. I show it to them, show them how it works. Do this just to take them through the features. I do this just to show them the features, and I'm posting the link in the chat, and I'm giving them the opportunity to just play. I want them to also see me just playing. So at this point in time, most of the students, I hope, are clicking on that link and clicking through drum bit. It's interactive, it's music tech, it's STEM, it's fun, and the students like this. So after this, hopefully they've got a good grasp of what to do with drum bit. And I tell them, hey, we're going to now build up this Doja Cat rhythm inside of drum bit. So I zoom in on my picture here and I have them copy. I have them copy this rhythm. Okay, so they enter this into drum bit, and I do it with them. I do this with them. After I share this for a few moments, I then turn back around and I share my screen of drum bit, and then I actually go back and I make this rhythm. I go back and I make this. So we have hi-hats. Goes all the way through. I actually go through with them and I make this rhythm. And I think is N2, N3, N4, E, and then I play it for them. This is way too fast. I'll lower the tempo of that to like 70. Boom, 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 boom. I think that's about the tempo. And then I go around and say, hey, can you share your audio with me? Let me hear what you made. The best part about this is some students are going to do exactly what you told them and copy it. But some students are actually going to compose their own rhythms. Now, talk to yourself as an educator. Once again, we're giving the students opportunities to showcase their work, which is harder and more rare in virtual learning, where you can't just blurt out the answer or just play in your band class and show what you've been working on, right? That's what they're doing. The students aren't playing at the wrong time because they wake up wanting to be annoying. They learned how to play Careless Whisper and they're showcasing that. That's what they're doing. That's what take from positive discipline, getting into the key. Some of your students are not going to have copied this. They're just going to have actually composed. And that's actually okay too. I don't want to discourage creativity. So once we've got them building this rhythm, I let them practice it. I tell them start with the bass and I do it with them. I play my rhythm on drum bit and we build it together. So let's start with the bass. Then let's add the snare. And let's add hi-hat. And then if it's too hard, sometimes I delete this E instead of pum pum. I just make it pum again, which is fine too. And then you give them a moment to sit with their own digital creation and practice it. And then I go around the room and I hear them perform it. And I've done this a few times, and even the students who the rhythm that I told them to do ended up playing the one that they composed, which is fine too. The point here is the students are active, the students are engaged. I think when you're doing virtual learning, it's important to kind of change your learning targets and focus more on engagement than the learning target, especially in the arts. We don't have a standardized test. So we don't necessarily have to achieve this, and this by July in order to keep our jobs, for example. So we're going for engagement over these overarching learning targets. Those learning targets will come once your students are engaged. So then I repeated that same process again with jazz, except this time I showed them their rhythm in this little chart. Hi-hats, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, bass, boom, cat, boom, cat. So this was me differentiating, kind of going away from the tech, showing them how to build a rhythm in another way, preparing them to want to write their own rhythms. Now we just made our own drum beat. Then we did a hip hop groove. And with this one, we went back to the drum bit. We built it together, adding that interactive music technology, and then we worked on playing it. Then I allowed them to make their own groove. I gave them a little blueprint. We started with bass drum, added snare, added hi-hats. I once again kind of demonstrated how to use drum bit. Then I just let them go. And then I chose students to showcase their digital creation and then showcase them playing it. And we heard everyone's grooves. So hopefully there's some good takeaways in that lesson as well, just about letting the students just play, giving them different ways to access the learning. We access the learning that way by having them digitally create it and also use their pencil instruments to create it as well. All right, here's an example of another lesson I did, and this one was a beatboxing lesson. Beatboxing, or you can do your classic boots and cats and boots and cats and boots, or like Everyone's been beatboxing since they were a kid. My strategy with these lessons too was I want to take something that all kids do, but make it curricular. At least growing up, kids are always in class. with their pencils. Kids are always beating on their desk. Kids are always making sounds with their mouth. Why not make it curricular? So here, I demonstrated beatboxing for them. I did some beatboxing just like I did for you. Have the students tell me, what am I doing? That's called a provocation. When you do a provocation, is when you present something to the students to provoke thought. That's the only goal. We want to provoke thought. I want students to tell me any and every question, comment, idea, desire, thought, anything that they can think of about what I just provoked them to do is what we want. We want them focused on this. We want them thinking about it. So a provocation can be another good thing that you do when you're doing virtual learning. Another example of a provocation could be you could show an image. So for example, here's a quick image I just pulled up. Let me share my screen. Here's another provocation. Okay. I share my screen and I click on this and I say, look at this picture. Tell me any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, thoughts. You can call on some students to kind of elicit participation, but some people might say it's gold. And I might say, well, it's actually made out of brass. It's a different metal. Some people say, isn't this the instrument that SpongeBob played on SpongeBob? And I'll say, yeah. You remember what happened? They'll say, wow, which is kind of what Patrick from SpongeBob did. But that's not just Patrick. That's an introduction to how the trombone works, because trombones go, that's what trombones do. So when you do these things, you're accessing prior knowledge, you're getting them, you're just provoking thought. That's what we're doing. So I started with a provocation by demonstrating beatboxing, and then I tell them some real quick content. Beatboxing is from India. If you know anything about tabla music, you know that they express these rhythms vocally, and that's how they learn how to play them. But beatboxing was made popular in America by the MCs and the different people in New York, different hip hop artists in New York. Once again, we're keeping the content to a minimum. So I introduced them to drum bit in this lesson as well. Interactive online tools make your virtual learning experience better. Different tools that I've used in music. I showed you drum bit. These classes I'm showing you today are percussion focused, which I'll use a lot. I showed you drum bit. Okay, here's another one that a lot of you already know about, but I'm just showing you the power of these virtual tools. Chrome Music Lab. It has many different things you can do on it. My favorite one is Songmaker. It is set up similarly to drum bit in that you can change the sound. Change the tempo. It also has a microphone feature. Another one I use often is Soundtrap. Soundtrap is, you can use it for free, but it doesn't have everything on it, but that's fine. You do have to join in, like you have to sign up to use this. And I can just quickly sign up with my Google account just to show you exactly what it is. I'm just doing this so that you can see fully what I'm talking about here. And hopefully in whatever medium, whatever subject you're teaching, you've identified some virtual tools that you can use. So you go ahead and click new. And then in here, you've got a DAW, which is a digital audio workstation where you can add brass instruments. And you can use the keyboard as well to play clarinet. You can play synthesizer with this. Just like that. So those are a lot of the tools that I use often when I'm teaching music virtually, and hopefully some of those would be useful to you as well. Oh, hey, we got someone attending us. Hey, Tony, good to see you. Thank you for coming out. So far, I've just been, and this will be available in our blog. It's being recorded. So far, I've just been going over some of the different sessions that I've done virtually and kind of some of the concepts I use to get me through virtual learning. Okay. So I introduced it. Next, we got the kids moving. Open your mouth really wide, then really small, really wide, really small. We got them being silly. Can you shake your lip? Can you do lip trills? Can you move your tongue up and down and left and right and down? We've got them moving their bodies. We've got them being silly. We've got them moving and being active, getting ready to beatbox. So then I explore sounds. Let's explore bass drum sounds. And what I actually did was I took these sounds from different drum packs in drum bit, from different drum packs in drum bit. So that oomph, oomph, bish, bish, boom, boom, those are actual bass drum sounds from inside drum bit. So I was able to use drum bit to kind of demonstrate some of these as well. Okay, so we explored bass drum sounds. I allowed them to copy my sound. I allowed them to make their own bass drum sounds. Then we explored snare drum sounds like cat, cat, brr, brr. That third one's not really a snare drum sound, but it's a cool sound that I liked from drum bit. So then we went back to drum bit and we learned our first groove, which is just snare and bass. And we have to remember which bass sounds, which snare drum sounds. And I was using the Indian preset on drum bit, and I helped them to build out their rhythms. I helped them to build out these rhythms and then start to perform them with their beatboxing. So once again, thank you all for coming. I'm going through some of the virtual sessions that I've given in music, hoping that I can kind of give some of the concepts of how to teach virtually effectively with this. So why is this important? Using the interactive tool like drum bit, giving your students the opportunity to do something by themselves away from their teacher is paramount in virtual learning. Usually when your kids are in class, they can do stuff without you seeing them. And that's necessary, I think, for them, because otherwise it feels like prison. But when you're on virtual, teachers literally watching you the entire time. They kind of have their eye on you. So allowing them to use these virtual tools is great. So we learned about the cha-cha rhythm. I had them build it with snare and bass. Then I had them showcase their drum bit creations, how they made it. Then we would go back and we would have the kids beatbox it. We would have the students beatbox it using these same snare drum and bass drum sounds that we learned about in the slide before. So I repeated that with a rock and roll groove and finally a hip hop groove. Then we would go around the room. I would call on people and have them kind of showcase what they're learned. And the last thing I showed them was boots and cats and boots and cats, which is just something funny and kind of fun. Yeah. So those were 3 virtual sessions that I've done recently, and kind of my philosophy behind how to effectively do virtual learning. So next, I want to talk about the final teaching scenario, which is teaching your band, orchestra, choir online virtually. These tactics, I think, would do well with anyone who's teaching in a secondary setting, in any type of setting that has a large class with like many students in it. I think will have success with these tools I'm about to tell you. So first things first that I like to do was use breakout rooms to do something called mindful listening. As we know, the pandemic and virtual learning and everything has been so difficult for our students. I kind of like putting them in breakout rooms and giving them a YouTube link of something that I wanted them to listen to that day, whether it be jazz, funk, R&B, child appropriate hip hop, opera, symphonic music, concert band music, anything, something cultural, maybe something indigenous, world music, anything like that that I wanted them to do. I allowed them to do that in breakout rooms. Here's the second reason that I use breakout rooms with teaching band online. Your students lost their opportunities to socialize with virtual learning. Putting them in a breakout room, they can freely unmute themselves and they can just talk, and I don't have to watch them. I don't have to hear what they say. I don't necessarily have to see everything that they're doing. Mindful listening. And sometimes I will actually play this music and share my audio, which they can still hear in the breakout rooms. And I just send them to those rooms. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, but allowing your students that opportunity to socialize, even when you're doing virtual learning, is so important, because your students, when they're talking in class, they're not just talking, they're socializing. And they lose that when we go to virtual learning. So then after that breakout room mindful listening session, I would bring the students all back in together, and I would usually do some type of rhythmic work. And I would do this in two different ways. So one way that you could do rhythm work is like this. I'm going to show you. I know I've been talking about drum bits so much in this session. One way you can do rhythmic work is like this. So you can use drum bit to do these rhythms. You can let your students know that inside of these downbeats are 16th notes. Like that. So then you can take and want them to do rhythm. Let's say, can we clap and count this? 1, 2, and 4E, and a 1, 2, and 4E, and a let's clap. Ready, go. And we will go through rhythms. Now, understanding that when your students hear these rhythms coming through their screen from shared sound, they're perceiving it as if they're playing with you. And I would either actually clap or I would just kind of mime my claps, and we would go through rhythms. Then once again, having the students be able to create and share, I would have them go, hit this link, go on drum bit, okay? Use one line only, click any buttons you want, make a rhythm, and then share your screen, let us see and hear it, and we'll clap along to your rhythm. So that's kind of one way that I would do rhythms. Then you can go another level with that. So you can say, okay, you can take my rhythm. Now, can you notate it? Can you tell me, based on what you're hearing, is it 1E, N, E, N, 4E? You know, being able to do something like that. So that's how I did rhythms. One of the keys to teaching music online is using pre-recorded video and audio to screen share that audio and then simulate playing at the same time. Because one of the difficulties is if I start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, the students are hearing it in time 1, 2, 3, 4, but when they play back to me, because of latency, there will be a delay. But that can be difficult for you if you are personally trying to play in time, because you'll be hearing 1, 2, 3, 4. So using the pre-recorded audio helps for that because they can play along with that audio and you don't have to try so hard. While you're doing this, you're unmuting them. You're hearing them play along with it. You're doing it one at a time or maybe groups at a time. Okay. So I also like using breakout rooms for the warm up. Most of your students know their warm ups, they know them by heart. You send them to breakout rooms and you let them practice their warm ups on their own before you do it together. And one moment of success that I had with this now is when you're using Soundtrap, you can actually share your project out to other people that also have Soundtrap. So once the students are on here, you can actually get on here together, turn on your metronome, and record, let's say, long tones. The students can actually come into this same thing and each of them can record. You know, you can be up there, student B is down here, student C is down here, and they can all do this without interfering with each other, all in real time at the same time. That's why I like Soundtrap. We're creating opportunities to, and I realized my screen was not shared that entire time. So what I said was during the warm-up phase, the students knew this by heart. I sent them back to breakout rooms, not necessarily by section, and I had them. They can go into Soundtrap for free. They can make an account. This is something we did on like the first day. Everything's free, but then when they get into this room, they can actually add people to this. So the 3 students or the 5 students in their breakout room can all come record long tones on this at the same time, not interfering with each other. Then you have them listen to it, have them play it back. And then I would have them share. I would call the breakout rooms back and pick one person from each breakout room to kind of share their screen. That's how we warmed up. Another way to warm up is like we did before. You can pre-record backing tracks for your warm-up, share your audio, have the students play. Likewise, you could also play and then have them follow along with you. I personally like using pre-recorded audio because it can be difficult to play in time when you're hearing their delayed sound come back. But if you use a pre-recorded screen share, you can actually hear them without having to also be playing. Okay. And like I told you before, these kind of interactive tools make the class more fun. Then bring the students together. A tool that I used a lot with my students was Sight Reading Factory, because Sight Reading Factory plays the audio. It can be audio shared. Once again, the students get the perception or they get the experience of playing with you or playing with a recording. They get this idea that they're playing together and they're all technically playing at the same time. They're all technically playing at the same time. Sight Reading Factory, for those of you who don't know, is kind of like a random music generating tool where you can type in certain components like 4/4 time signature, quarter notes and eighth notes, key of B flat major, and it will spit out 4 bars of music. And you can have them do that. Then likewise, so that they all don't get unmute themselves and make that cacophony of sound, you can have them go into groups, into Soundtrap. You can have them go into this Soundtrap and you can have them record themselves all at the same time, playing along with you, and they can showcase that work to the other students in their small groups without necessarily everyone unmuting themselves and playing at the same time. Okay. So, one way that we actually practice repertoire, part of the time when I was online learning, a lot of the students were actually in class and I was not. So this worked really, really well because they were together. I would actually use MIDI or use some of my instruments, take the method book lines or the concert piece we were learning. And my band was only playing like grade 1.5, maybe grade 2. So this wasn't too difficult. Band was new at the school. And I would actually create backing tracks to the songs we were playing that included a count off. Then I got to the point where I was actually making videos of me conducting with side by side images of me playing as well. And then the students were actually able to play together along with that. They were actually able to play along with that. Now, when you're in the large groups and they're all at home in different places, when you unmute one or two students, it's difficult for them to all play not muted at the same time. And that's why I like using Soundtrap, because they can actually play their part into Soundtrap. And what you can do with that same backing track that I would create in Soundtrap, I could invite the students to it and have them play along with those parts as well. But I kind of offer some of these techniques to minimize the all playing together at the same time and hearing it, to kind of minimize doing that, because that unfortunately does not work with large groups. And I don't have to tell you why, but I will anyway. The reason is because if they're all playing together based on my recording, when you unmute one of them, everyone hears the recording, which is coming through exactly as I'm hearing it, but then they're hearing the latency of the other person playing it back to them, which will then not line up with the recording that they're also hearing at the same time. Right? So, and this happens when you have multiple people playing together across different places, mostly because of internet speed and other things like that. So we're trying to simulate that as best we can. We're trying to simulate that as best we can. And using the backing tracks really helps, because my students are still hearing trombone sounds, still hearing tuba sounds, still hearing percussion sounds. So it's essentially the same as you putting in headphones, turning on Beethoven 5 and playing flute along with it. It's the same effect as that. Okay. During any no instrument periods of online learning, there was a period of some weeks where the students didn't have instruments, and we did a lot of Soundtrap. We used MIDI, and we actually used that to create kind of a MIDI performance of our music, where I sent the students to breakout rooms. I had them take their parts, analyze it. I taught them how to set up the DAW, and they actually recorded all of their parts. And the different groups went in on the same project, added flute, added trumpet, and we put that together. The goal is just to get them playing, rehearsing, this and that, recording, like that's extra, that's great. But the goal is just to get them playing, get them engaged. All right, that was a lot. Here's my overall tips. Okay, remember to give time alone for some asynchronous work, time where the students are working on something at their own pace. Give the students a chance to get up and move. If you're teaching band or choir, even orchestra or anything, add some movement activities. This is a great time to introduce your band to marching, just to get them moving. If your kids don't know, or if they're high schools, if they do know, you get them moving. Maybe if they're middle school, they don't know about marching, you introduce it to them. Give your students a chance to work alone or in small groups. Use those breakout rooms to give the kids a chance to socialize. And don't stress out if you're not hitting these so-called learning targets and goals. Engagement first, learning second. That's probably the only time you hear a teacher say learning second. All right. As always, I'm Michael. Hopefully, by me breaking down some of my methods of teaching music virtually, you heard some gems that could be generalized to the other arts disciplines or even other subjects. You can get me, you can contact CommonTime on all social medias at commontime.online. YouTube is CommonTime Online. Facebook is CommonTime Online. Instagram is at commontime.online. LinkedIn, all that. You can email me at michael@commontime.online. Yeah, that was this week's Wisdom Wednesday. Thank you. And thank you for Tony, who came out and spent some time with us. I'm going to contact you personally, Tony, and let you see this blog post so you can actually watch this video in its entirety. And I appreciate your time. Thank you. Oh, January 23rd, Marriage of Figaro, right here in the Arts Organizations tab. Get your tickets now. Bye-bye.